So that's
Yeah,
what I
really.
mean.
Passed.
I mean, the first 5
What?
days, I
The
was like,
minute
no, I'm
passed.
never gonna,
Those two
ever, am I
did
going through
pass.
this ever again.
30 seconds to go.
Sounds kind of like. I just don't want to winter. I hate winter. They got their first batch the other day. So that there was one girl, she's accounted for now, and that's mine. So those two, but the rest of them are on both days, and then she's a girl, but she's a little bitch.
Sit in front, Margie.
Nobody wants to.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
got
church.
online, I was Googling it the other night, I was like, all right, I guess I'll start looking.
5 o'clock, you may go.
At least to try to find.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order with roll call.
Roush,
Here.
McLeese,
Here.
Modernock, Orr, Simon.
Here.
Approve the agenda. Did everybody get a chance to look at it? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public comment? Seeing none, approve meeting minutes from November 14th, 2023. Have a motion on that?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Month-end financial reports, November 2023. Everybody get a look at that?
Yeah.
Not much with summer being over, and you will see, you discussed that last time that we got, I asked the enhancement committee to provide us half the funding, which is what we paid so far. We'll talk about that later, but the playground equipment was delivered, so I'm sure we'll have the other invoice soon. And then just minor bills, and then obviously just some of the pool expenses, we're just finalizing closing the pool, so that's what that stuff is.
Okay, number 7.
Gotta approve those.
Oh, we have a,
Already did.
I'll make a motion
Motion.
to approve the financials.
Oh, the financial, sorry.
do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 7, pickleball project discussion.
As the board knows, we've been talking about pickleball with the pickleball group that's here, representatives. The conversation that we had last time was to notify the neighbors that are immediately around the site that we had talked about in the northeast corner of the park over by Oak Hill. So that was sent out. I asked MSA to kind of help us, just to give you perspective on the map that's included, that is fairly proportionate, so you can see where the road's a little bit too close for parking there. And you can see sort of where you could fit 4 for sure, and I called that phase 1, and then if there were ever to be a 5th or a 6th, called that phase 2. So we'd start on the east, move to the west. Left enough space where they would be located to have that 8-foot asphalt trail someday or on the perimeter. And then just for perspective to show where the playground equipment will be installed here in the spring. I didn't receive any issues from people that lived close by there. Not sure if anybody's here or not, but I did not hear anything from the mailer that we sent around.
How many were sent out?
Just like 5 or 6, just the people immediately around there.
Okay.
And so
So you heard no feedback from
I didn't get anything.
concerns or, okay.
Right, but I don't know if anybody's here from that area or not, we can ask. Then, as you'll recall from our past meetings, the pickleball people had asked for permission to start fundraising. We connected them with the enhancement committee. The enhancement committee had requested that they not fundraise until after January 1, just for tax purposes, because the enhancement committee had received quite a bit of funding that we had done for the playground equipment out there, over $70,000. Then again, just like we did with the library, if it's going to have city involvement or on city property, I think it's appropriate that any kind of fundraising that relates to city projects goes through the appropriate board and then up to the council. So we can see if anybody has any questions about this. This is preliminary, but at least if we're fundraising, people need to be able to say where it is and that we're at least committed to that location if in fact we ever. Doesn't mean that it's going to go. We have to see where the funds go. You know, the number that we've talked about, if there were 4 courts, was around $175,000. And I think we're talking about an approximate 2-year timeline, probably not, unless things go really well. probably not ready to do anything next summer of '24, but maybe a summer of '25 or spring of '25 if
And-
fundraising went well.
And that would be to start phase one.
Correct. As you know, there were also conversations that, our next agenda item will be about some future ball fields, and the conversation with that group was that they may be able to reserve some space for pickleball. I don't think that allowing them to do something in this area means that there would be no reason to have them out at a future ball field site. I think, again, all those things kind of have to happen in the order with which they happen. For those people that play down at the city park, it's not ideal down there. It's swampy land, and the concrete is always going to be in a swampland. So if you kind of look at like, maybe at some point, if it stays there for now, and then you had more out at Oak Hill, and then maybe by the time a ball field thing happens and you work pickleball with ball fields, then they go and put more out there, then maybe eventually they're just not down there. In communities that I've worked in, I think if you ever want to have what you'll call a tournament, you have to have at least 6 courts. So if you had 2 sets of 4, you would certainly be able to do that. You know, when I was in the Quad Cities, communities had their own, you know, like here's the Cascade group and the Dyersville group and the Epworth group and the Monticello group, and they all invite people to come and have a, you know, day tournament. It does bring in people. It's certainly not like a baseball tournament, but it, you know, is a good thing, and you can't just have 4 courts really easily to do that. I think 6 is probably that number. So just kind of answering a few questions at this point. Again, I think what our focus here tonight was to make sure that if we had input from neighbors, that we would get it, at least from just a preliminary phase. Lots of approvals would have to go through if they were able to fundraise. If the park board wants to allow them to fundraise at this point, then I would like to see you have a recommendation of the council. And then that would come before the council next Monday if you make a decision to recommend something tonight. And then assuming the council gives their blessing, then that allows the pickleball people to go and do some fundraising. No commitments on what this board would commit. It's just work as hard as you can, because the more money you get, the more chance you have of the project coming to fruition. And again, like it's, you know, some of this stuff is things come at the same time. Obviously, we know that the ball field people are here and were here before. But that's in the millions, and so they're sort of not in the same ballpark. And that doesn't mean that we don't want to have conversations about both, but I think to say that one has to be related to the other when they're such different prices, I think that kind of, at least in my mind, makes them somewhat separate.
So tonight, we're not talking about requests for funding, we're just talking about requests for placement and the ability to fundraise.
Right. If you look at it like we did for the playground, we did not commit to a playground until they came back out in Oak Hill and said, what have we raised? But we gave them permission on behalf of the city to be able to fundraise. Because I don't want people going out and saying pickleball and then where is it going to be? Or is the city on board? Oh, I don't know, maybe, maybe not. Like that doesn't go well for fundraising. And so I think everything, you know, we try to make this as in order in a little bit of a, you know, it's not a perfect order, but yes, tonight is, do we at least support that this is where it would go if it goes first? And obviously things like if there's, you know, nobody ever wants these things to be in their backyard, but I think that if it is in someone's backyard, we want to make sure that we're respectful if there's arborvitaes that get planted. If, I think Jan Frazier had talked about that wherever you were before, like somebody had, maybe it was when you're out in Arizona, and that there was like noisy, what was it, Jan, that you talked about? Like something was noisier than others, and come up to the podium. But just, my point is just things like that, that we will, of course, if we get to that point, be respectful of making sure that we're as good neighbors as we can, recognizing that there's a park.
And that's what we want to do. We want to be good neighbors, and we want those people out there to know what's going on. In Arizona, what we did, we were, actually, our 9 courts are between 2 streets. Come to find out, it was the whistle thing. We
Oh,
would
yeah,
have
that was it.
tournaments, and so it was the whistle. And we thought, well, we don't have to be blowing a whistle, so we cut that out. And then we also, there's paddles and there's balls that you can use that cut down on the noise if it's, you know. So we went to certain balls, and we thought too, if we could plant some those
Arborvitaes.
there you go, trees, you know, between, and kind of make it a little bit more private. And I don't know. We want to be good neighbors to them too, so.
And I believe you will be. You know, it's mostly, you know, mature people that would be using those courts, and I think they use good judgment in that case,
Yeah.
in most
So-
cases.
Right. So I don't know if the board has any questions. Otherwise, the action that I would be looking for is either to see if anybody has any comments from, if anybody's here from the neighborhood. That would be one question. And then the second would be if the park board wants to recommend to the council to give this group permission to start fundraising at the first of the year. We can certainly have conversations before then. Is there anybody here that lives?
Yeah.
So if you can come up to the podium and say your name and address, please.
It's directly behind my house, so I'm just wondering how close is it gonna be? Is it gonna be on right on our property line or just?
So, did you get the map that we mailed?
Yes, I did.
So basically, what I did was left somewhere between 5 and 10 feet from the edge of the city's property. Then there would be an 8-foot trail, and then there would be a few more feet before the fence. So right next to your property, no, but certainly not a large gap, because it would be tucked in, kind of in that northeast corner, and get pretty close to where the road, that's not really an official road, is. So kind of up in there.
How many feet from?
So you got to add those numbers. It's 5 to 10, then 8, and then probably another 5 to 10. So somewhere between, if you took the 5s, 18 feet to
30.
30 feet. So close to you, like it isn't going to be a large, but again, you know, that's why we wanted to let you know that. It's always intended, it was donated for the purpose of a park. And so, you know, it's always been the intention of the city to develop that at some point into a park, just, and that's where we talked about, like, maybe in that strip between your property and the walkway, that there could be like pretty solid arborvitaes there, you know, to be able to create a sound barrier, things like that.
Yeah, either that or a board fence, you know, right on our property.
Right.
If they would do that.
Yeah, and these will be fenced in, so like balls aren't gonna be flying over by you or have any reason why people would come into your yard. But I think, again, like, this is probably 2 years out, so just be reassured that if we get to the point where we're gonna build it, then we'll have more conversations with you, and certainly try to be as respectful as we can be to be good neighbors. Doesn't mean that we'll say, like, yeah, we won't put it there, like, we're gonna go put it, like, the problem is, like, even though we have 7 acres, not all that land is usable in terms of like putting stuff on top of it, because a lot of it has solid rock underneath. So that the likelihood of it being in that corner is pretty high, but if you felt better having a fence right by your property versus arborvitaes, like, we certainly will work with you to talk about what that looks like, but it's pretty premature right now to even have that conversation. We just didn't want you to hear that they're fundraising and conversations, and then you're like, wait, what? We don't even know what you're talking about. And so trying to be respectful to you as neighbors, and have you included in that process, and just know that while we wouldn't discuss, it's just too early to say, does a bush seem more attractive or a fence? And if we get to that point and you still own the house, then we'll reconverse about that and try to be as amicable with something that makes you feel better than if there's something that is less desirable to you.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Mhm.
Anybody else that has questions? Obviously, pickleball people are here and they're kind of ready to hit the ground. So I don't know if the board is ready to make a decision, but it would be basically number 8, again, as a recommendation to the city council, confirming that this is where, if there were to be a project, this is where you'd like it to be as a recommendation, and then permission to allow them to start collecting donations.
Do I have a motion on that?
I'll make a motion to recommend to the city council for the future pickleball location and request to collect donations.
Have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carries.
Thank you. And again, we'll be in touch we'll keep you informed if they get to the point where they have enough funding and we're getting serious again about some sort of construction. We'll be sure that we're in touch. You're right next to the road
Yeah.
that you drive into. Yeah, just drive in and you're to the right. Okay, yeah. So thank you for coming, and we'll be sure to stay in touch and keep you informed. You're welcome.
All right, number 9, discussion with the Cascade Future Fields Recreation Incorporated on ball field projects.
So again, everybody knows that we sort of were, not sort of, but there was people that attended a city council meeting and a park board meeting, I believe, about having some sort of additional ball fields in the community. This park really isn't conducive to that, and obviously that's our only parkland left. So if this were to ever happen, they needed to find an additional space. So again, you're sort of trying to pick the best order of operations. And so the group that has named themselves as Cascade Future Fields and Recreation, Inc., did go out and find a piece of land that they have an option to purchase over the next couple of years, and Nick's going to come up and speak about that. So they have that possibility. And then to kind of, we had talked about them having to take a back seat until the library was done. And they knew, of course, that the library bids were going to be open in September. And then we all know what happened with that. And so we asked them to kind of lay low. We opened the bids last Thursday. They're still slightly high, but I think that by next Monday, we'll know for sure what's happening with the library. But I would say from my position and where we're at in terms of funding, fundraising, and city commitment, that we'll be able to move that project forward. That's what I assume will happen on Monday. But again, respecting the council gets to make that final decision next Monday. So with that, that was kind of where we've laid low with this project. But in the meantime, the group has met with consultants, a number of different people. They picked who they thought was the best. There's been some initial conversations. And so when I compare it to the library, sometimes it feels overwhelming that we're like right on top of this library project, and now we're talking about baseball, and oh my gosh, there's a lot of things going on. But remember, when you back up the train for the library, that this conversation today about hiring consultant is like what we did in 2021 with FEH. And so there was a conversation about like, what does this library look like? Where are the possibilities that it could go? And then it took a year and a half. We started fundraising. We bid it again. And by the time this library is built, if it's approved on Monday, it's 2025. And that's a 4-year time frame. So even though it feels like we're sort of on top of everything and this library is going on, like really the conversation for focus of tonight is, does it make sense that that group that's been created has a consultant to try and help us talk about what would it look like, where might it go, and what kind of funding are we talking about? We are not talking about us committing funds at this point for a project. We're talking about, does it make sense for the city to partner on behalf of the park board and the city council on this project? And the answer that I would give for a yes, and that doesn't mean how much we give, but a project like this is not likely to have much validity if there isn't some sort of city support. And so for a group to just kind of be these great parents of baseball kids and off on their own doing that, like that makes it much more challenging. And I think you learned that in the pool. That when there was no city commitment, like people don't take it as seriously. And so Nick can explain a little bit about the consulting firm and what their tasks would be, the total dollars, and then what I would say our focus again here tonight is, do you want to partner with the group? And if so, what number would you recommend out of our funds? Again, recommendation of the council, because I think it's important that it's approved by them, and what that dollar amount is something that you're comfortable with. So that's my intro.
So my name's Nick Kramer. I'm part of this group. And like Lisa said, we've already been here once, presented, we were told to hold back, but our group continued on to talk, see where our options were, some land would be. We found some land, talked to the landowner, and we do have a 2-year contract signed with them to purchase this land. As far as, she was just mentioned ball fields, as our name is Future Fields and Recreation. So we're not just doing ball fields, we're thinking of the pickleball people, or basketball, or soccer. We kind of have thinking of put it in phases. Our first focus is the baseball fields, but adding on to it in pickleball and soccer fields, whatever. So what we're here tonight, you have the contract from this H&H Engineering. It's Hall & Hall out of Hiawatha. We've been in contact with them to kind of help us out. And in there they have their services. So it'd be page 13 of that contract, where their service would be their master planning and then you'll see the fee for that, and then visualization, model and fly through, and then a web design and meetings and fundraising assistance. We're looking, you know, in order for us to continue on to start any fundraising, we have to have some sort of plan to show people. So we want to work with H&H Engineering and you guys to see if you can help us get that started, to help cover that cost of the planning and the visualization and fly-through of this land we have signed purchase agreement with. Obviously, we don't have it bought, but we need some sort of plan to get us started. So, you know, the master planning is the 19,000, and then it was 8,000 for the model and the fly-through, and the web design is 3,500, so you're roughly 30,500 of that initial plan to get us going. Now, I am also part of the youth league in town, and talking with the youth league, being a part of it, where they're willing to help cover some of this cost, so we're kind of asking you guys, would you be willing to help cover some of this cost for this initial planning, so we can try to move forward and possibly get to that fundraising point? Hopefully I explained it.
So Nick, when you talk about master planning, that would come up with the plan, and then the visualization model and fly-through? What exactly does that mean? Obviously, the website is if you get to the point of fundraising and there's a website that people can go to.
Right.
So that-
that model and fly-through, the planning is the plan, the
Yeah.
top-down view of where the fields are going. The model and the fly-through would be more 3D, where they'll put it in virtual 3D and build a look around.
Even on a library, like, we chose not to do that. Like,
Okay.
it was cool, and like, when I was down in the Quad Cities, we did do it for the Y, so that people could like walk through and feel like they were walking through the building, because it is hard to visualize it. But I don't know that it's necessary as much, especially when you're looking at like an outdoor facility like that, and maybe,
Which that's-
not saying it doesn't have to be. Obviously, if you get to the point of needing to have a website, again, maybe that's something that we partner with you on, and it's part of the city's website. So maybe what I would recommend is focusing more first, even phasing this a little bit and saying, let's at least talk about the 19. Because when you think like getting all those plans for 19 and then spending another 50% just so you can show people like as if they're there, that's what we decided, at least for the library, that it just wasn't worth it. Even though I was used to it and thought it was pretty cool, but then when I saw the dollar amount, I'm like, whatever, forget.
That's good information to have too.
Right. So not saying it's not important for you, but we even
Right.
chose in an indoor facility where you're definitely like little nooks and crannies and sitting places, like we decided to skip that.
Okay.
And the website, I'm not, again, saying it's not important.
And we're not saying that we have to do, you know, the website or anything.
Right. Because, I mean, to me, again, it would make sense to probably have something connected to the city, even if it, you know, and like, I won't volunteer Chantel, but she's fabulous at our website, so, you know. Things like that. Like, there has to be a depository location, but I would say at least just in understanding what these line items are, for me, what I would suggest to the board is focusing first on what you might help with on the 19, as opposed to looking at it as a 30, if that's.
Anything to help on the
Now, Nick, you said that you had a confirmation of funds given to you from the Youth League. Did they give you a set number that they were willing to donate?
They were set for half
Of the 30 or half
of
of?
the 30. That's kind of where we're sitting up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's less than that, obviously, it's gonna be split. We would like it to split half and half, but
So again, these funds would come out of the 50,000. That's basically like your option there. We know that 20 of it is gonna go for the fence, at the dog park. That's the biggest thing. And then, of course, like, we're in winter mode, so you're not gonna spend anything right now, but there probably needs to be some things looked at in the spring. We haven't gotten the bill yet for the door frames out at the park, so I guess that would come out of there as well. So, I guess the question, again, if you sort of set aside B and C on the list, and you were looking at the 19, if you were looking at splitting that, I guess the question would be, would you be willing to allocate 9.5? Would be half of the 19. And then if we ever got to the point of having other discussions or other items going down the list, that would be a revisit.
What do you guys think?
I mean, I agree if we're, you know, just from my experience with the pool, Lisa kind of brought it up, like you have to have, it's always hard to decide where to start. You know, you want to raise money, but you can't raise money if you don't have a plan. And in order to have a plan, you have to spend money and, you know, so, and, you know, that's, you're going to hit the ground running if there's council support, park board support, you know. That's 100% necessary. You know, my concern just is, you know, there's so much going on. We have library that, but it sounds like this is just the initial phase anyway of,
Correct.
you have a couple years with the whole land thing, it sounds like, but you have to start figuring out how to raise money ahead of time to go down that first phase of a road, so,
Correct.
yeah.
And you have to have something to, in order to go.
This is a
down that road.
multi-year, it's not happening
Yeah,
overnight,
this is
so.
not happening in 2 years.
Right.
And that's what I kind of said, like, this is likely, if we're talking realistically, and the library was no different, that we're not breaking ground here until probably 27 in a generous mode, and maybe even 28 or further.
And you've signed the 2-year purchase agreement for the
Land, yes.
land.
So again, it's going to be hard for them to really have enough information to decide if that makes sense, because they do need to have someone to help them, like, how do they serve it for water and you know, like, it's in the city limits. And so that's not really a well and septic conversation, so it does have to be water and sewer. You know, we have to look at the electric that's kind of right on the border and make sure that that's within our territory. If they need gas out there, all those kinds of things. And so really engaging someone like that to have that conversation. So, you know, we don't like to spend money on anything, of course, because we're all trying to be as fiscally responsible as we can. But at the same time, you know, I think that if you're willing to go with the 9.5, you certainly can take that out of those dollars. The council definitely had favorability towards working with the group, and so at least, again, my gut feeling is that there's not, you know, a huge negative feeling in any way by the elected officials for that. Whether they would say to strictly take it out of that 50, or they would find, you know, taking some of it out of the park board's 50, and maybe the council commits to some other dollars pot of money so that you don't take it all out of yours, but that would again be their decision. So if you recommend the 9.5, I would say you have to be prepared for it to come out of your 50, and I'm certainly happy to look between now and next Monday if I feel like there's an appropriate place to take some of it out of a different bit more.
Well, I think the 9,500 is pretty fair. As you came down, Lisa, with,
I think that's the appropriate focus
Yes.
for tonight, if you guys are okay with that.
do I have is there any more discussion on it?
Again, recommendation to the council as your motion, please.
Do I have a recommendation of 9,500 to the council to start the master planning for the Little League fields?
I'll make a motion to recommend to the council for the 9,500 towards the master planning.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I would recommend that you come again on Monday then, please.
We'll plan on being somewhere.
And I'll give my same spiel. Thanks, guys. So, are you ready to go on the next thing? So I included the dollars, I just kind of copied off the website. These were the dollars that we charged last year.
Oh, pool fees?
Yes, so we have 85 for an individual, and I think that was the one that we left the same. We did not raise that last year.
Correct.
And then the one, obviously, the world is more expensive now. So, as you remember, when we reviewed the numbers last time, when we kind of went over, like, we certainly have a good hunk of money that comes in for all the different sources of revenue between lessons and pool passes and everything else, but there's still a very large chunk, and if I recall the last number, I didn't look at it again, but it's around 50-50. And so 50 of it's being paid for by tax dollars and 50 of it's from revenues. So with the fact that we probably need to increase the lifeguards again, and, you know, utilities are gonna go up, all that different stuff, I don't think that we should make a significant jump, but I don't think it fares well for us to typically stay exactly where it is. So even if you were to willing to, like, raise it $5 or $10, I just think that keeps us moving in the right direction to at least try and cover a little bit of the extra things that cost more in one year and the other. And again, if you take a whole summer of coming, how many times that you can come every day, twice a day, all summer minus bad weather, it's by no means a bad investment in a pass.
Have we compared it to any other pools in the area?
We did when we talked about it at the.
Yeah, I
one
mean,
of the
there's
meetings.
some that are higher than us and some that are lower than us. But again, I don't think it, you know, like, we're not out of the ballpark. I didn't actually call. And
So,
the-
and I brought numbers too, just because I started thinking about it, and then I was like, well, you know, I couldn't remember all the numbers that, you know, I wasn't at that meeting, but I did this stuff, so, when you look at like what we used on average from an individual, the average time was 22 times of an individual person that went, and that equates to 110.
And you're talking about a family pass?
Correct.
Okay.
No, that's
That's
a,
an
that's an
individual,
individual.
85.
Yeah, the
Top one.
$85.
Oh, the 85. Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, so if you just take that times, if you came $5 every day type of thing, that's $110. So, you know, on average, the person that has an individual pass comes X number of times. We don't want it to be 110. We want to give them a little
Yeah.
discount or whatever, but,
And the key is they have the option to come more times.
Right, right.
Chantel, since we opened up the pool, have we increased the admission fees?
the $5 admission fee?
The
Or you mean like
individual
the-
season pass, the family,
We did
Yeah.
last year. We did the family, we did the family with caregiver, but we did not do the individual.
We went up $25. It used to be $150 and $175. But 85 was 85 a year ago.
Correct.
What would it do if we decided to charge more for out-of-city participants?
It's just hard because then you're asking for people to bring IDs. Like, I've worked in many pools.
It's harder for the
many
kids that are at
cities.
the pool.
What's that?
It's harder for the staff.
Oh, to realize who's who? Yeah.
But I shouldn't say that. Let's go with this. If you are out of town for a pass.
True.
It would not be.
Correct, because
And
we're
you could say
handling that
daily,
here.
you're not gonna do that. But remember, this is where it always gets sticky. In communities that in most communities I've worked in, it's resident, non-resident, because they say that you're paying the tax dollars. However, people that live in Cascade, that don't really live in Cascade, think they live in Cascade.
Correct.
So as soon as you leave the
And they
city
could be,
limits,
and they could be people that have donated towards the pool too.
and
so
they
it's
think
kinda-
like,
Yeah,
oh, I live in
yeah.
Cascade, and then they
That's
think it's the
true.
school district.
Yeah.
And then we're like, that's true that you live in the school district, but none of your school taxes come here. And so it definitely creates a whole new atmosphere.
So when we did in 2020, when we opened, that, we tried to go down that path with COVID, was like, you could only come to the pool just because of COVID. If you, and it did, it was like, well, I live
just
here,
gets
and
ugly.
yeah, it was it's
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
it's complicated.
It's a whole
Right,
nother
right.
layer of complicated.
Yeah, yeah, that doesn't.
But
sound
if you were gonna do non-resident, resident, if you were ever to engage in that conversation, I would say it should be only for the passes, because then they're coming here, showing us their ID, not trying to do on the day-to-day, like it's a kid who doesn't have their ID and they
Oh.
get dropped off and they live out in the country. So, again, I'm thinking of $5 or $10. type.
for the individual? You said
I guess
Regular?
either, somewhere in $5 to $10. I just think that, like, you're gonna pay a lifeguard more to be there, you're gonna pay for, you know, whatever goes up, things go up. The
I
guys'
think
wages.
the
I like
things
that.
I think the things that we've increased from last year to this year should stay the same, because they've already had a significant jump from last year to this year, but we didn't change the
Well, let me,
85.
let me tell you the numbers, because I
Okay.
thought that was interesting. So the family and the family with caregiver ironically both had around 45 times on average of coming. So they could have came less, but some of them, you know, somebody had 238. I mean, they could come way more also.
So they literally paid $1.
And when you think about an average family of, you know, let's say it's an average family of 4 type of a thing, if you take just the 45 times, that equates to $225. And we're charging $175.
Now, when they do that family season pass, do they have to specify who their caregiver is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay,
only
so they
get
can't
one.
just say, okay, today this is my caregiver, tomorrow that's my caregiver.
And the caregiver, the only time it's not like if you're a caregiver, you can just come in on it as an, like, tread water either. It's only with that family.
Oh,
They're
okay.
attached to that family.
They don't
So-
really get their own individual pass.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
So, but I mean, I would say if we're gonna do it, we should do it for all three. That would be my opinion, just because,
And I would say either all three, or I would even just do the family ones again. If the individual's already, it's at 110.
110 is the average. We're at 85 right now, so.
If we
I mean, we could go up close.
go 5 for the individual,
To take that to 90?
yeah, I'm just
Right,
throwing it
right,
out.
yeah.
And then the family season pass,
Maybe 10.
I'd up that 10, and I would up 10 for the family season pass plus the caregiver.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
So
I think
90,
that would be fair.
185, and
90,
210.
yeah.
I would
Yeah.
agree with that.
I mean, we want people to come and enjoy.
Yeah,
We don't want to
yeah, we
get
don't wanna
it too
price it
high and then
out.
they're going to go to Monticello or.
Right, but
Right.
when you think about,
Dar-
like, if any of you have kids that are in dance, they don't spend $200. They spend $200 on an outfit.
Oh, I know.
Or the dance that they spend
I know that.
$1,500.
I don't know that.
Yeah, because you had boys. So did I.
The other thing, so, I
But
mean,
it's just
I
trying to
know
be
we're
relative.
immediately discussing like passes. You know, in my opinion, I think the $5 admission, it's pretty standard.
I would
I
keep
would agree.
I
that.
don't think we should
Yes.
increase that. And then I also researched we had like a discount, like if you were coming 5 days, instead of paying $25, we gave you $20 and you get a 5-day ticket. I just think we should get rid of that.
Did you
Yeah,
see
I
much of
agree.
that?
Because we didn't have very
Did
many,
you-
we did
you
not
didn't?
sell very many of
I
Oh,
would,
we-
those.
I would agree to get rid of that completely.
So then that kind of saves us a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can,
Because I
They
feel
either
like if
buy
someone's
family
gonna do a
passes or they
5-day
do the
pool pass,
daily.
they're just gonna be like, well, I might as well just do a regular pass
Right.
yep.
at that point. And this maybe will convince them just to get the pass.
Yeah.
So then if someone were to motion to that, the summary would be 90, 185, 210, and $5 daily.
Yep.
And the only
5
reason we need to decide this right now, by the way,
Oh.
is people are chomping at the bit for Christmas gifts.
Oh,
And if you
sure.
remember, last year, we sold everybody's Christmas gifts at the old amount
Mm-hmm.
because we didn't increase them. And so I said, no one's allowed to buy passes till the
So
park board
the
asks.
5-day pool pass is
Is out.
eliminated, correct?
Correct.
Correct. And if you, that would be part of the recommendation. So 90, 185, 210, $5, and no 5-day pool pass.
Do I have a motion for that?
I'll make a motion.
A second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carries. So it's 90,
Playground equipment.
10. All right.
Just wanted to let you know that Friday, the playground equipment was delivered to the utility warehouse. Obviously, we can't do any installation or unwrapping of it until spring, when they'll have to transport it out there. We do intend for our Public Works crew to install it, and so they'll get
So will
at
they
it as
do
soon as,
the spot, you know, pave
Yeah.
that spot and put
won't be
the,
paved,
well,
but
why no?
dug out, yeah. There'll be
Develop
concrete.
that spot.
Correct,
Look for the word.
yes, that's the plan.
Okay.
But obviously
Sounds good,
spring, but at
excited.
least it's here, and like I said, now, next month, you'll probably see the other 30,000. We'll get that, we have over that at the enhancement committee, so that's, you know, and that was again with that
Exciting.
50,000 that we had a conversation that some of those funds might need to come out of that 50, but they were successful in raising all of that bill, so.
What color is the playground equipment?
It's like a light purple, a dark purple, and a kind of neon green. So it's playgrounds. So,
Those are all like blue, right?
a lot of them are Cascade
Yeah,
Cougar
it's
colors.
blue and
Blue and yellow.
Yeah, it's like light purple, dark
Brown.
purple, and green.
The other one
Lot
is
of
kind of like a
brown.
tannish brownish, yeah.
green.
A little more fun. So anyway, that's all.
All right, dog park update.
So just like the rest of the world, like we waited 6 months to get those door frames fixed. Like I can't get hires to call me back right now. So I feel like most likely with snow on the ground, we're probably not looking at that fence being able to be installed. But I've left messages. There was a gentleman who I think is like the field person that scheduled it, and I tried to leave him a message. So I'm hoping that we can, at least since we've missed the fall, like be first on their docket.
Once the frost goes out.
Right, so just an update.
Okay, 14, any other business?
I don't have anything.
Anybody?
Nope.
Okay. Have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion
A second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carries.
I'm glad we have these discussions.